So betrayal can take on many different forms. So let's find out from a betrayal coach what you can do about that.
Building spirituality, family, health, and business. This is the Giant Builders with Lois Wyant.
Hey, Giant Builders. So I have a friend who gave me some samples of a wonderful shampoo, and I have permission to send those to you. So I will have my email below. Just send me an email with your address, whether you have dry, oily, or normal hair, and I will share these samples with you. All right, let's check out our speaker. Hey, Giant Builders, welcome. Must be Tuesday, and it must be 2 o'clock because here we are. So today's guest is Janice Michele. Hi, Janice. How are you?
Hey, Lois, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming. Can you please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. My name is Janice. I am a betrayal trauma healing mentor, and I'm a single divorced mom of three boys. They're all pretty much grown. My youngest is 17. Um, Went through 20 years of marriage to someone who wasn't committed to me. Um, and through that, I have come out the other side and am now using my experiences to help other people be able to heal from the same kinds of situations. So,
Okay. Well, I noticed that the name of your ministry is When God Spins a Yarn. Can you expand on that for me?
sure. I came up with the name with the help of a friend of mine, and it encompasses basically everything that I don't know. It encompasses who I am and what I how I see God working in our lives.
Hmm.
So I love to crochet.
Okay.
So that's where your yarn and spinning comes from. And then also I grew up with a dad who was a boat builder, a woodworker, and we lived on a sailboat for a while. And so sailing is really in my identity, my who I am.
Okay.
Um, and so when the sailors talk about spinning a yarn, they're talking about telling a story and telling it well.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
when God spins our yarn, he is telling our story, telling it well, and he is making the tapestry of our lives, and he already has the pattern in place. And so that is what my ministry is about, is being able to focus on who God is, who he says we are, and embracing that as true so that we can walk out the plan that he already has.
Oh, I love that analysis. That is so beautiful. That's
Thank you.
wonderful. So, what is betrayal trauma?
Betrayal trauma is a form of trauma that happens to us when somebody that we rely on for our safety and our well being significantly betrays us. So it could be childhood trauma, can be a betrayal trauma, like if you were severely neglected, things like that. The one I deal with the most is spousal betrayal, which is, like I said, what I went through. And so any kind of spousal betrayal can cause a trauma response and needs deep dive healing.
And today, even with technology, I see that that is more than just another woman. I had
Oh
a
yeah.
friend who contacted me and she caught her husband on porn and she just felt crushed. I mean, that was betrayal.
Yeah.
And it's just so easy to have there.
Yeah, it's so readily available right now, so easy to access and at such young ages too. So a lot of the times it starts way back in their youth and they get addicted. It pornography can be an addiction
Mhm,
and it causes so much harm, just like other addictions do.
mhm.
And the more, just like any other addiction, the more you watch it, the more you need. And it needs to be more twisted and more, more of everything for it to give you what it gave you before that dopamine hit. And so very often leads into more than just pornography.
Yeah.
And it is a devastation, even if that's as far as it went, it is still a devastation to the wife.
Yeah. Yeah. I have heard on like a Christian radio station that pornography actually like triggers things in your brain and it like it's a whole physical process on your brain.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
It rewires your brain, and to be able to get out of it, you have to again rewire your brain. And the way believers would look at that as, I mean, it is a physical thing, but God knew that. God knew what was happening. God knew what was coming, and God has told us to renew our minds. And that's how we have to get out of any addiction.
Mm.
But yes, pornography does. It will literally change your brain. It writes different pathways in your brain, and you have to rewrite it to be able to get back to a healthy relationship.
Oh. So is this kind of similar to marriage counseling?
No, not what I do. And marriage counseling is a is different in that it's focused on the marriage itself. Whenever you have betrayal involved in the marriage, there is a lot more going on, and there is individual healing that has to happen. I work with the wives healing from the trauma of what has happened from their husband's betrayal. It does happen the other way around too. Women can betray men, and men can have betrayal trauma.
Yeah.
I'm not equipped to work with the men. There are people out there for them, and I can direct them where they need to go if need be. I work with the women in healing their trauma, and I encourage, if they're going to try and stay in their relationship, I encourage them to make sure that their husband is getting their own counseling, their own therapy, to dig through and find out what's going on with them and what led to these situations. And then after they each have their own individual counseling and can heal their individual parts, then they start to work together and go, okay, how can we mesh this back together? And I would hand them over to an expert in that area. But I work specifically with the wives.
So do you find that is there a percentage of women who fight through this and stick with their husband?
There is. I couldn't give you numbers, but there are plenty. I have been in numerous online communities and things, and sometimes it works. It can be worked out. You can stay. You don't have to leave. Um, every situation is different. And some people will take this phrase and not like it, but let me explain what it means. And maybe either way is hard. You have to choose your hard. And that is thrown around a lot, but it's true in that it is hard if you're going to stay and work on the relationship and try to make that work. That's hard. There are
Mhm.
hard things you have to do. There are certain specific things you have to do to make that work. It's also hard to go ahead and leave. And there are different things to take into consideration with that. So you're not going to be able to choose what to do simply because it's the easiest thing to do. You are going to have to look at the situation and say, both of these things are really hard. Which one do I really want?
Mhm.
Which one can I handle? Which one looks like it's going to work? And you have to factor in a whole lot of different factors to be able to decide. Never, ever decide if you're going to stay or leave while you're still in the midst of the hurt. You always have to take time and process.
So what does a first meeting look like with you?
The first free assessment is I just talk with you. I just kind of ask you, okay, what's your story? What are you looking for? What kind of help are you looking for? What have you experienced? Things like that. It's basically just a get to know you kind of assessment. And typically I end up giving them a next steps some next steps ideas. Okay, this is where I think you need to focus right now. This is what you need to understand about who you are. And then I can go on with them and say, okay, you can come work with me and dig into, how do I walk in my identity? How do I know who I am? How do I believe that? But the first initial assessment is more just kind of getting to know you and seeing where you are, where you want to go.
Yeah, 'cause that has to be something that really does crush your identity. Like, what happened?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have found often that it's not just the betrayal that does that, especially if it was only one time. One time is just as devastating as any numerous times,
Mm-hmm.
but people tend to see it as different. Um, but the what I have found often is that there is a lot more behind it, and there is usually at least some kind of emotional abuse going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so your identity is slowly taken away. And that is part of why you end up with CPTSD, which is complex post traumatic stress disorder.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's from repeated traumas happening.
So do you find this is connected often or at times to a kind of a narcissistic relationship?
There are usually at least narcissistic tendencies. There are manipulation tactics.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's cheating, they're manipulating. They have to be, because they're lying.
Okay.
And a lie requires manipulation to get away with it. So there is at least manipulation all the time. Um, and that is the basis of a narcissistic personality disorder. There's a gamut of it. There's narcissistic traits and there's narcissistic personality disorder. Not everybody that behaves that way has the disorder, but yes, there's narcissism in there. Yeah.
Okay. So is there a foundation to your message of your ministry?
My foundation, the basis that we work from, is God loves you just the way you are and loves you enough not to leave you there.
Yeah,
And God created you, and therefore He knows who you were created to be. And you should not ever take your identity from anywhere else.
that's wonderful. Any closing thoughts?
I would just say, make sure, if you're going through this, if you suspect that your husband has cheated in any way and you're going through this, make sure that you get help. Don't try to just deal with it by yourself.
Mm,
Um, because you're gonna have to you're not gonna be able to control him. You're not going to be able to control how he responds to you confronting him. You're not going to be able to control any of that. The only thing you can control is you and your response and your healing. So get some help for you before you try to do anything else and before you make any decisions.
no, that's good. Well, Janice, thank you so much. That was such great information. I really appreciate it. I just really, I guess I never really thought about all the process there involved with the betrayal. So I really appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
So, all right, Giant Builders, see you next Tuesday.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Giant Builders with Lois Wyant.